At this point in the season, most waiver wires are filled with backups and dart throws, but not this week. Between injuries, role changes, and a couple of surprise breakouts, we actually have multiple guys worth picking up. Let's go position by position and break down who can actually help you in week 9 and maybe help you win your league. The first one we have to talk about is the Cam Skattebo injury. He dislocated his ankle. He's going to be out for the year. So moving forward, Tyrone Tracy will be the guy for the Giants as he was last year. He was on the field for 78% of snaps following Skattebo's injury on Sunday, and he's probably going to be a RB2 rest of season. And when you can get an RB2 rest of season, a talented one at that, remember what he was doing last year, it's a blow your FAAB type of situation, especially at this point of the year. Jackson Dart's elevating that offense, and Tracy was an RB2 last year before he started fumbling, right? As long as he can keep that under control, he'll get the lion's share of snaps the rest of the way, and there's a good chance he's startable every single week from here on out. Next up is Bam Knight. A lot of people might have dropped him over the bye. Obviously an amazing matchup. J.K. Dobbins just did his thing, went over 100 yards. R.J. Harvey just had 3 touchdowns against them. So, he's a pretty easy start and pickup if you needed a running back. Trey Benson can't return until week 10. And when you look at Bam Knight versus Michael Carter before the bye, it was clear that Knight was the guy. 58% of the rushing attempts for Knight compared to 29% for Carter. And he's also the clear goal line guy as well. I think Knight can actually come through this week in a great matchup. Kyler Murray is also expected to be back this week as well. Another running back who might be available on your waiver wire is Tyjae Spears. He's simply the more valuable Titans running back right now. And I know Titans running back, Titans anything you don't really want, right? But we have a couple waiver wire pickups for the Titans right now. They're really into that youth movement at this point. But Tyjae Spears has outscored Pollard in 2 of the last 3 games. He looks pretty good. He'll consistently be involved in the receiving game, 3 catches in each of the last 3 games. He's also outrushed Pollard in 2 of the last 3 games as well. The Chargers are on deck. You have to believe that the Titans will be down big again in this one. So Spears makes a very solid upside flex play. All right, I want to hit on Samaje Perine real quick. With Joe Flacco, Chase Brown has been way more efficient. He's been doing great, right? But one thing we've noticed is that Samaje Perine is pretty involved in the game plan right now. Brown does not have the same role he had last year. Since Flacco arrived 3 games ago, he's getting 55% of the rushing attempts and 50% route participation, which is great, but it's not last year's role. This isn't necessarily a RB1 type of role whatsoever, although he put up RB1 type of production in yesterday's game. But Perine received 38% of the rushing attempts, 42% of the snaps. He's getting the majority of the 2-minute and passing down snaps as well. So if you ever need it, he is a desperate flex play at running back. Just needed to point this out in this new role around this backfield. A whole lot of scoring going on in this backfield on Sunday against the Jets. A few more running backs to list out. Dylan Sampson is one. Quinshon Judkins hurt his shoulder, but is now day-to-day officially, and the Browns have a bye this week. So presumably he'll be back and be good to go after the bye, but it's worth noting that Sampson is the next man up here. He was on the field for 73% of the snaps after Judkins left the game. He was also targeted on 30% of the routes he ran on. So keep an eye on this situation. Rashard Smith, I'm recording this before tonight's Chiefs-Commanders game, but he's someone who's been involved as a receiver. He's someone who can get leftover carries if the Chiefs are ahead. I can't wait for people to listen to this on Tuesday and things drastically change. Who knows? If anything, I'll post something in the comments, all right? Isaiah Davis, simply here because Breece Hall could get traded, and he's the clear handcuff on the Jets in case anything were to happen there. Bashal Tutin, he's been playing well with the opportunities that he's been given. He's the clear handcuff. He has a ton of upside if anything were to happen to Travis Etienne, but also since the Jags are coming out of their bye, I want to have Tutin on my bench just in case there's a change to the deployment of that backfield. Just want to mention Tank Bigsby too. Saquon Barkley left the game with a groin injury. Tank Bigsby ended up going over 100 yards in that leftover work once the game was out of hand. Saquon said it's not a big deal. It's something that he's been dealing with, and the Eagles also have a bye this week. So he could be just fine, but similar to the Judkins situation, you got to keep an eye on it. And yes, Tank is the clear number 2 running back right now behind Saquon. Let's move to some wide receivers. Malik Washington, he was 3rd in targets behind Waddle and HN. He also scored a touchdown this game as well. And Darren Waller is on IR. There was opportunity for someone to step up, and that was Malik Washington. Like I said, he was 3rd in targets behind these guys in the first game without Waller. His route participation jumped all the way up to 76%, and his target share also jumped to 24%. So significant changes there. He's now in the wide receiver 3 conversation if this usage holds. And he has a great matchup against Baltimore as well this week. Next up is Chimere Dike. Youth movement again in Tennessee. Like I said, Dike has been the most successful wide receiver that I've seen 2 weeks in a row all year long for Tennessee. He caught 4 for 70 yards and a touchdown in week 7, then went 7 for 93 on 8 targets this past week. And the biggest thing was that his role grew to a 91% route participation out of the slot. And given how good he's looked as a rookie, I'd imagine that even when Calvin Ridley is back, he'll continue to be the guy out of the slot as he's been, and maybe continue to earn targets because Ridley just hasn't been able to get it done. He's a very, very solid solid pickup this week to see if he can continue that production. Let's talk about the Texans wide receivers, okay? Of course, in a game without Nico Collins, CJ Stroud decides to show up and throw for over 300 yards along with 2 touchdowns. Maybe we could use some of that when Nico Collins was on the field, but nonetheless, he was out in this game. Xavier Hutchinson, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll, they all came through with solid flex play production. Like whoever you decided to start probably came through for you and probably was pretty good compared to what your expectations were coming into the week, because you had to be pretty desperate to start any of these guys. But Hutchinson and Higgins had near full-time route participations, around 80%, and Knoll still came through on only 45% route participation. So, 5 catches for 63 yards on 6 targets for Knoll, and these other guys getting similar production, but they had a lot more opportunity and a lot more routes run. And, you look at what Knoll's been doing over the past few weeks, he's been overperforming on the opportunity that he's received. Over the last 3 games, Knoll's been targeted on 28% of his routes, and he's averaging 10.9 fantasy points per game with half the route participation. Rational coaching would say he needs more work, right? He is my favorite waiver wire pickup of the bunch this week, simply because of the upside that he presents. If I had to use my brain and not my heart, because my heart says Knoll, to figure out who will be the guy on the field when Christian Kirk is back and when Nico is back, it would be Xavier Hutchinson, right? Christian Kirk potentially getting his slot role back, Nico obviously playing the X receiver role. And Hutchinson was barely getting work in terms of targets with Nico on the field, but he was running the most routes of anyone not named Nico, which is why I prefer to just grab Knoll on the cheap, throw him on my bench, see how it plays out, treat it more like a stash type of situation, because if he does end up getting more playing time, I think the upside is tremendous. Speaking of upside, Troy Franklin, he had a big performance against the Cowboys. How real is this performance against the Cowboys, right? Now, his route participation jumped back up to 87% this week, and he came through in a big way. He led the team in receiving with 6 catches for 89 yards, 2 touchdowns in this one. Definitely worth rostering if he's available, but I feel that he's going to continue to be a very volatile player. You consider the matchup here and the success the Broncos had. Listen, Troy Franklin's burned me a few times this year, okay? I'll just say it. Maybe that's scorn me, and maybe it's my heart talking here, but hey, 10 targets last week, 8 targets this week. Not as good of a matchup next week against Houston, but he makes a solid upside flex play if you need one. Let's talk Christian Watson. He didn't waste any time producing. He caught all 4 of his targets for 85 yards last night. He didn't run a full complement of routes, only 65% route participation, but he made his presence felt, right? He limited Romeo Doubs too to only 18% target share, when he got 28% target share over his last 3 games. Matthew Golden's 17% target share that he had during that span also dropped to only 9% in this one with Watson back. So if Watson becomes the deep threat in this offense, he just needed 1 game to get it going. The path to a golden rookie breakout isn't too promising, and you never know, man. Watson might end up being the guy that we were hoping Matthew Golden would be this entire time. And Kayshon Boutte is another one that I want to mention. He's just somebody that you're hoping for a long touchdown, and Drake May is throwing the deep ball better than, I don't know, any other quarterback right now in the NFL. So, Boutte obviously getting it done. We talked about him coming into the week, going up against a single high coverage team. Next week, going up against Atlanta. Tough matchup, but guess what? They play the most single high coverage of any team in the NFL. So another potentially decent matchup, despite, the fantasy points against, showing that it's not a great matchup for wide receivers. Drake May playing the way he is, Boutte playing the way he is down the field. You could throw him in your lineup and be okay potentially. Let's hit just a few more wide receivers. Trey Tucker, right? Number 1, it seems like Geno Smith's favorite wide receiver at target right now. And then number 2, Jacoby Myers might be traded. A lot of chatter about that this week. Darius Slayton, he actually led the Giants in targets with 5. It was a pretty tough matchup against Philly. And, moving forward, he could end up being the primary downfield target. And he's somebody that who should be rostered right now. Not a whole lot of production. You could probably get him for pretty cheap. Jalen Coker, his role is increasing as we go here. 76% route participation on Sunday. That went up from the week before. It could go up even more. And with Bryce Young coming back, we could see a little bit of that rapport that we saw last year. And Alec Pierce, he's continuing to get it done. He might be a little bit more than a deep threat at this point. He's not getting a whole lot of targets, obviously, with Josh Downs back. This week, in a more competitive game, we could see Alec Pierce end up, being a lot more valuable. But Pierce at this point, he's putting up enough production where he should be rostered in most 12-team leagues. And let's talk about a few tight ends that you want to pick up, potentially as streamers, potentially as guys you can keep moving forward. The first tight end that I would pick up this week if I want to play somebody is Juwan Johnson going up against the Rams. It looks like his targets are back the last 2 games. Very healthy volume number for Juwan Johnson. He could continue that moving forward. If you don't need someone to start this week but want the best long-term option, probably David Njoku. He's on bye this week, came back last week. I think people just thought that his injury was going to be more severe than it was. He's available in a ton of leagues at this point, but he's on a bye, so keep that in mind. But moving forward, him and Harold Fannin can coexist, okay? So don't just assume that it's Harold Fannon's show the rest of the way. Isaiah Likely, still somebody I'm stashing. I was hoping that this would be the week that we can see a little bit of that. But Lamar Jackson hopefully back this Thursday. I want Isaiah Likely on my bench just in case he ends up popping off. Colston Loveland going up against Cincinnati. This is one of the best matchups for tight ends in general. And if Cole Kmet is out once again, we could see Loveland have a much better game. And by the way, Loveland's VAR participation did jump way up with Kmet out of the game. A couple other guys, if you're desperate, Theo Johnson going up against San Francisco and AJ Barner going up against Washington. Quarterback Sam Darnold going up against Washington. Pretty good matchup for quarterbacks, and Darnold's been playing really well. Tua just threw for 4 touchdowns this past week. He's at home against Baltimore on Thursday night, and Baltimore is a very giving defense as a whole. And a couple more, Aaron Rodgers at home against Indy and Trevor Lawrence at Vegas in that order. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. Appreciate you so much. No trade show this week, no underdog trade show either, but we'll be back at the end of the week to talk matchups. Green light, yellow light, and red light for all positions. Take it easy, guys. See you later. Peace.